Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. This time the podcast is coming to you directly from the CXOutsourcers conference in Windsor, UK. I saw Miya speaking at the event and we moved to the sidelines to have a conversation. Miya is the head of industry insight at Eagle Eye Solutions. She's the director and publisher of Retail Technology magazine, and she has a long history in both retail and technology journalism and analysis. She's also the co-author of a recent book titled Amazon: How the World's Most Relentless Retailer Will Continue to Revolutionize Commerce. I asked Miya about retail and about her views on Amazon in particular. We were at the edge of the conference, so now and again there is a bit of extra background noise on occasion. Okay, so let's go straight to the interview. Okay, so you published a book about Amazon and their effect on the retail industry. And one interesting observation that you made quite specifically was that Amazon focuses more on how they sell rather than what they sell. Could you explain that a bit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the best context to set my answer in is the fact that Amazon's 25 years old this year. And when you look at the time that Amazon has grown up in, it really has ridden the coattails of us as consumers embracing technology to inform and speed up our shopping journeys. I would say that if the internet hadn't been invented, if mobile phones hadn't if we didn't have the iPhone effect, as it were, Amazon wouldn't be nearly as large as it is today. And that, given that as the context for Amazon's one of the main factors, contextual factors for Amazon's growth, I think it's necessary to explain that Amazon actually went out to master how to sell via those technologies. So if you think about the traditional route of a retailer, the retailer will think about the product. I've got a great product and I want to sell it to you, and they've probably got an ideal customer in mind. They don't necessarily have to think about how they sell that, whereas Amazon turned that notion on its head and decided to try and work out how it could sell profitably online. Hence the reason it started with books as a very predictable product from a consumer standpoint, in terms of being able to show you the cover and you know what you're going to get, and it's a predictable product to ship in terms of its size and weight as well. So having mastered a basic, easily repeatable product sale, it was able to then go on and become the everything store. So coming back to your question, they sell everything. It doesn't really matter what they sell. Yeah. What they've really based their success on is how they've sold it, how they sell what they sell.
Okay. Well, we know that they're constantly innovating, and it's almost impossible to outspend them on innovation. There are some partnerships like Walmart working with Microsoft, but they don't seem to be redefining retail in the way that Amazon achieves. So how can anybody compete?
Well, I think our the initial question you asked me about the how and the what of retail has relevance here in answer to your question about how other retailers should react. If they feel that they have the means and the will to move the dial on how they sell what they sell, and that is going head to head with Amazon on R&D spend and embedding innovation into the center of your business, then by all means go for it. It's more likely that a tier one global retailer will see themselves in direct competition with Amazon, and therefore will potentially look to either partner with them, stand together as it were, to work together to stand apart, as they say, or they'll look for equivalent competition that can scale and help them compete directly with Amazon. So you mentioned Carrefour partnering with Google, and Walmart will always look for the Amazon alternative wherever it looks to partner. So if you're concentrating on, if you really feel as a retailer where you need to move the dial is on how you sell what you sell, then I would say you need to decide whether or not Amazon is more of a competitor or more of an ally. Mm-hmm. And that usually is based on how big you are. When I think the other massive amount of headroom that Amazon's left retailers, though, is on what they sell, and being a lot more conscious of their merchant curation capabilities and bringing those to bear. I think everyone's very familiar with the fact that you can find everything you might think of on Amazon, but it's not always the most pleasurable experience to go out and find them. Mm-hmm. You have to kind of be your own human search engine using its filters, and even then you're still getting tens of thousands of results. Yeah. I think retailers have an opportunity to help consumers find the products they want much more quickly, in a much more pleasurable way, where you're adding a little bit of fun to the function. And in that sense, that's another way, apart from the how, in terms of the what retailers sell, where they can actually go one step further than Amazon and actually compete with Amazon in an area where it actually hasn't disrupted the industry as much as it has when it comes to how it sells what it sells.
Okay. Well, there's been some famous innovations, so things like Amazon Go, the store without any staff. But of course, that must be enormously expensive to actually build and operate those stores. So how long will it be before some of these ideas like this can actually make economic sense, and we might see them rolled out to every supermarket in the country, for example?
Trying to think of the best way to answer that question. I think it's twofold, my answer. First of all, let's look at what the Amazon effect from a technology standpoint in terms of its impact on other retailers. A great example, without running straight to Amazon Go, is one-click checkout. Mm-hmm. Amazon patented its one-click checkout, which I think expired in 2017, but still gave it a huge amount of headroom to grow into in the intervening years. I think the patent was granted in 1998. You might remember it aggressively defending it against Barnes & Noble when it was just a bookseller. So Amazon certainly recognises the importance of being a leader when it comes to technology innovation. Picking up on the point I made about the how versus the what of what you sell, I would say that it pays to probably be a fast follower of Amazon when it's developing technology innovations that become standard. But then I think the second part of my answer would be not just to seize on the technology for its own sake, but to really think hard about whether the particular technology that you're following Amazon on is relevant to your business. So fast forward to Amazon Go, I would say I think it's going to be a number of years till we see the technology, computer vision based artificial intelligence technologies that power Amazon Go becoming widespread enough, commoditized enough, and therefore cheap enough to be adopted by your mass merchant grocers with thousands of stores per country. Amazon, I would suggest, is perhaps one or two. There's only one or two retailers out there that can afford to take a punt on such technology right now. And actually, if you look at the format, small urban stores, convenience format where people just want to grab and go, they're actually going to mitigate the ROI by focusing on a format that brings in maximum sales per square foot. So extrapolate that out to your massive out-of-town stores and you can suddenly see how the ROIs are going to stack up. So I think it pays for the retailer, depending on their size, depending on the sector they operate in, to really look at where Amazon is targeting these types of technologies and to use that as an indicator as to whether or not that would suit their business, their operations, more importantly still their customers as well, and pick and choose from what Amazon does well and also try and differentiate in the spaces it leaves where it's not actually playing at the moment.
Okay. Retail in general is having a lot of problems, but in particular, there's certain sectors like department stores that just seem to have lost their way. I mean, are there any lessons that, say, some of the big department store chains can perhaps learn from a digital-first retailer like Amazon?
Well, let's take it back to first principles. I think a major takeaway from the Amazon effect is that Amazon has exposed mediocre retailers. It's no longer good enough to just rub by, middle of the road. And I think, picking up on your point about department stores particularly, they're a really interesting sector, because actually their success was predicated on that merchant curation capability to bring together collections of products that you wouldn't be able to get under one roof anywhere else, with a very clear target customer in mind, whether that's high-end luxury, mid-market for your Debenhams, etc., or even maybe slightly more budget for BHS. And I think it's telling that you see the Selfridges and the Harvey Nichols of this world being high-end luxury doing really, really well, and the mid-market, middle-of-the-road department stores struggling.
Yeah.
And I think that is literally because luxury is one of the sectors that's been slightly insulated from the commoditization of Amazon becoming the everything store. But I think that the Debenhams and BHSs of this world have been too complacent in targeting the consumer and really, really starting to hone in on their merchant curation skills. By that I mean they're overstored, their ranges are far too diffuse. I think if they were able, and I'm counting that as well, Marks and Spencer, some of your general merchandisers that have food and home and food, you're playing across a lot of categories there. Pick what you're good at and be really, really good at that, rather than trying to be a generalist. And I think that's the trap that a lot of mid-market retailers are currently falling into.
Okay, and so, with that in mind, I suppose, are we going to see a change in the way that the town centre itself is constructed? Because I suppose Amazon's redefined what it means to go shopping, not just Amazon, but the use of, or the growth of e-commerce. So will we be seeing a reshaping of more experiential activities and gyms and creches and other places? Or will we just continue to talk about the high street as a street full of shops?
I think there is an external factor here that none of us can call, and that's what incentives local and central governments, particularly in Western markets, can leverage to mitigate what's the so-called death of the high street. I think you're also right that I think, as myself and my co-author Natalie say in our book, that the high street's no longer, or the store in itself is no longer a place just to transact, but it's a place to learn, to have fun, to borrow, to feel a sense of community. And so I think we are going to see the use cases and makeup of our high streets shifts to address that, to meet that need. Debenhams bringing in gyms, for example, was I think one of the examples you probably had in your mind when you asked the question. But what I am starting to realise after having written the Amazon book is that I don't think we're going to see, well, I know for a fact, and I've said this from the beginning, and the book has only confirmed my suspicions, that we are not going to see the death of the high street. I constantly get asked, is Amazon killing retail? And I say, no, Amazon is killing mediocre retail, and that's got to be good for us as customers. Similarly, Amazon is not killing the high street. The high street is going to morph and change and has to keep pace. But the thing that I don't think I've been able to address in the book, but that's really come to fore in the last 3 or 4 months, is quite how important proximity is to filling your digital funnel. Those retailers, bricks and clicks retailers who were traditionally brick and mortar and have moved online, and frankly have enjoyed double-digit growth, sales growth online, are now starting to see that growth tail off.
Yeah.
And they pay an incredible amount of money to acquire customers to fill that digital funnel. I don't think retailers realise how much, they are starting to realise how much of an advantage having a local physical presence is, from a click and collect, fulfillment, operational standpoint, but from a customer experience standpoint in terms of acquiring, converting and retaining customers. I think the best way to sum up what I'm trying to say is the example given by the CEO of Fresh Hippo, the Alibaba convenience stores in China, which was, and this was in front of an audience of American retailers. He said that 60-70% of his online orders come from within a 3 to 5 mile radius of his stores. And he said, you guys are spending all this money filling your funnel. My funnel is filled within 3 to 5 miles of my door. And there was an audible gasp in the room. And I really think that was a light bulb moment where retailers have felt that e-commerce and online is at an arm's length to their store. In the last maybe 3-5 years, we've started to see their realisation that the store's not just a transactional hub but a fulfilment hub. You've asked me about those other elements now, maybe the softer elements about community and somewhere to try, not just to buy. But I really think that symbiotic relationship between online and the store is still something retailers are really learning about. It's just an emerging relationship, and one that they're going to be able to exploit a lot more effectively in future, particularly when it comes to proximity-based, location-based technologies and tying the customer identity into the local inventory and offering them really highly targeted, highly relevant offers, and advertising and marketing that draws them in and makes the most of the proximity play, as well as the convenience play of being able to order online anytime you like. I think that will force retailers to really upskill their store staff, so the store has to become a destination and there have to be knowledgeable people, potentially digitally enabled with tablets. I mean, you don't have to have an expert that's worked there for 20 years to know the ins and outs of the product. You just have to give them the capability to answer the questions that customers may well be able to answer themselves. The store's role change, we're going to see the role of the staff populating the store change, but I really think that is a really good place for the high street to be, and it would be great if we could get more and more retailers to think along those lines and think about their stores as huge assets rather than a legacy challenge that they have to manage.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please take a moment to review the podcast because this helps other listeners to find it. And if you have any suggestions, then get in touch with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I am @Mark Hillary with 2 L's, or just search Google for Mark Hillary.